I want you to just take a second and imagine your own bedroom at night.
Right.
Specifically, that incredibly quiet kind of liminal space right before you drift off to sleep.
Oh, yeah, that exact moment.
Right, where you know the exact contours of the room in the dark. The hum of the refrigerator down the hall, or the way the streetlights cast those long, familiar shadows across your ceiling.
It's totally predictable.
Exactly. From an evolutionary standpoint, it is your ultimate sanctuary.
Right.
I mean, it's the modern equivalent of the safe cave.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It's the one place where you have absolute control over your environment, where you can finally just power down your biological threat detection systems and actually rest.
Which is so crucial because we completely rely on that geographical and, auditory predictability to feel safe enough to lose consciousness. If you think about the psychology of sleep, it requires this total trust in the permanence of your surroundings. Like when you close your eyes, you are inherently trusting that the room will remain exactly as it was when you left it.
But what happens when that predictability starts to rot?
Wow, rot is a strong word.
But it fits.
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't happen all at once. Not with some sudden cinematic explosion or a monster kicking down the door, but slowly, incrementally.
Yeah.
And that is the trajectory we are exploring in today's deep dive. We are unpacking an 18-minute audio narration that was originally broadcast on a show called Midnight Signals.
I've listened to this so many times and it never gets easier.
It really doesn't. The segment is titled The Echo in the Closet at 3:07 a.m. And I just have to warn you right up front, it's profoundly unsettling.
It is. And, the format of the source material is what gives it such immense psychological weight, because it's an audio diary sent in by an anonymous listener. The producers of Midnight Signals, they simply refer to him as Ryan.
Just Ryan.
Right, just Ryan. And he didn't send a long explanatory email. He didn't, seek out a community forum to workshop a scary story. He just dumped this raw, entirely unedited audio file onto their servers.
It's one rule.
Yeah. With a single, incredibly cryptic instruction attached, which was, don't let anyone open the closet.
I mean, just reading that line in the source material gave me chills.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the setting of Ryan's account makes it so much worse, because it is aggressively, painfully normal.
So normal.
Ryan lives alone in a quiet second-floor apartment. There is no dark history to the building. No eccentric neighbors, no, creepy basement.
Which makes it highly relatable.
Exactly. We've all played that midnight guessing game of, was that just the house settling or is someone in here?
Oh.
What we are about to explore is the absolute worst-case scenario of that exact moment of hesitation.
And rather than relying on cheap external threats, Ryan's account documents the slow, systematic erosion of his reality. We are going to analyze how an ordinary mind just breaks down when confronted with something that violates the fundamental laws of physics and psychology, and how the deepest horrors are often intimately tied to our own sense of self.
So let's look at how this actually begins, because Ryan describes himself as a notoriously light sleeper.
Which is awful in this context.
Truly. And a lot of you listening can probably relate to that, right? The kind of person where the slightest shift in ambient noise pulls you right out of a REM cycle.
Yeah, the absolute worst.
So, on the first night of this phenomenon, he wakes up. The apartment is totally silent, except for a distant, muffled voice. He checks his phone. It is exactly 3:07 a.m.
The spatial origin of that sound is the first critical anomaly here.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, Ryan methodically notes that the acoustics are just wrong for an external noise.
Right.
It isn't coming from the hallway. It isn't bleeding through the drywall from a neighboring apartment. The sound waves are originating from inside his own room.
Right inside.
Specifically from inside his closet.
And the voice is faint, right?
Yeah.
It's barely a whisper, but it just says one word. It says Ryan. It uses his name.
Which immediately elevates the threat level.
Right. But at first, he does what any of us would do. He rationalizes it. He blames his groggy brain, assumes it was maybe a stray thought that he accidentally vocalized, and he goes back to sleep.
Denial is powerful.
It really is. But the very next night, the pattern locks in. He wakes up again. It is exactly 3:07 a.m. The voice returns, and it's slightly clearer this time.
Yeah.
It says, Ryan, open the door. And this is the moment The narrative tips into pure nightmare because Ryan realizes the voice coming from the closet sounds entirely unmistakably like him.
It is a perfect auditory clone.
A clone.
Yes. Ryan specifically documents that it isn't just the pitch or the timbre of the voice that matches. It mirrors his exact tone, his specific rhythm of speech.
Right.
Even his unique habit of hesitating slightly before enunciating certain words. It is his natural cadence projected from a dark box, like 3 feet from his bed.
That's terrifying.
And then the entity adds a final sentence that second night. It says, "You left me in here."
Okay, I mean, hearing your own voice played back to you on a normal smartphone recording is already an uncomfortable experience for most people.
Oh, I hate hearing my own voice.
Right. We never sound the way we think we sound. But try to imagine the ultimate uncanny valley scenario. You are lying paralyzed in the dark, and you are hearing your own voice being generated live, in real time, from an enclosed space right across your room.
It's unthinkable.
It completely scrambles the brain's audio-sensory feedback loop.
The neurological implications of that are genuinely staggering.
How so?
Well, when you speak, you hear yourself through a combination of air conduction, so the sound waves hitting your ear from the outside, and bone conduction.
The internal vibrations of your own skull.
Exactly. That dual input creates your internal concept of your own voice. So to hear your voice purely through air conduction live without the corresponding internal vibration of speaking the words,
It breaks the brain.
it induces an immediate state of cognitive panic.
Because it's a phenomenon that forces the brain to simultaneously recognize, this is me, and this is absolutely not me.
Right. That paradox dissolves the boundary of the ego. The threat fundamentally shifts from an external danger, like, say, a stranger breaking in, to an intimate parasitic invasion of the self.
That is such a crucial distinction.
It is. When whatever is in that closet weaponizes Ryan's own identity against him, it forces a terrifying internal cross-examination. He has to question his own sanity.
Right. Like, is he suffering a dissociative break?
Exactly. Is he sleep-talking and somehow throwing his voice? The mimicry is designed to isolate him from his own sensory perception.
It's the perfect way to paralyze a victim.
Yeah.
But, an auditory illusion, no matter how convincing, eventually loses its shock value if it doesn't manifest in the physical world.
It has to escalate.
It has to escalate to maintain control over Ryan's reality. Which brings us to the events of the third night.
Here we go.
It's 3:07 a.m. The voice speaks from the closet, and this time it asks, "Why won't you open it?" But the dynamic has fundamentally changed.
He turns on the light.
He turns on his bedside lamp, and he gets his first piece of tangible physical evidence. The closet door is slightly open, just a crack, just enough to reveal the pitch black space inside.
We cross a massive psychological threshold right here.
How do you mean?
Well, up until this moment, Ryan could desperately cling to the idea of an internal malfunction. Waking dreams, hypnagogic hallucinations, extreme sleep deprivation.
Right, the clinical stuff.
Yeah, there are rational explanations for hearing things in the dark. But an open door requires kinetic energy. It requires physical mass interacting with the environment.
And he knows he shut it.
In his recording, Ryan is absolutely adamant. Closing that closet door is a strict, non-negotiable part of his nightly routine.
Okay, look, I have to completely pause the narrative right here and push back on Ryan's reaction to this.
I had a feeling you would.
I mean, this is where his behavior stops making sense to a rational observer. He is staring at a closet door that has physically moved. He knows he closed it. He knows there's an entity sounding exactly like him trapped inside that darkness.
Yeah.
If I am in that situation, I am out the second-story window. I am running down the pavement in my bare feet, and I am never looking back.
Most people think they would do exactly that.
But Ryan walks over, pushes the door shut until it clicks, and gets back into bed. Why? Is he just completely in denial? How does a human being's survival instinct fail that spectacularly?
Well, it is incredibly easy to judge from the safety of daylight.
Yeah.
But what you are labeling as denial is actually a highly documented, deeply ingrained neurological defense mechanism.
Really?
Yeah. Disaster psychology refers to this as normalcy bias.
Some normalcy bias.
Right. When a human brain is confronted with a sudden reality-breaking terror, something that completely defies its operating parameters, it often just cannot process the trauma.
It just shuts down.
Kind of. Instead, it frantically attempts to reboot the system by enforcing a mundane, routine action.
Wait, like people who try to fold their tray tables and gather their carry-on luggage while an airplane cabin is literally filling with smoke.
Precisely. The brain says, the world is ending, so I will perform a normal task to trick myself into believing the world is fine.
Oh, wow.
By walking over and firmly clicking that door shut, Ryan isn't being brave. He is experiencing a catastrophic cognitive short circuit.
He's glitching out.
Basically. His brain is desperately attempting to physically close the door on an ontological trauma. He is trying to force the laws of physics back into a room that has abandoned them.
That is deeply tragic, actually.
He really is.
He's trying to enforce the rules of the real world on something that just isn't playing by them anymore.
Oh.
And the tragedy is amplified because the coping mechanism completely backfires.
Oh, in the worst way.
The moment the wood clicks shut, right through the thin paneling of the door, the voice whispers, "Thank you."
The entity validates his physical intervention. By saying thank you, it acknowledges his presence right on the other side of the door. It shatters the fragile, desperate defense mechanism he just tried to erect.
It's taunting him.
The phenomenon has successfully bridged the gap between a cognitive hallucination and physical, spatial reality.
And the failure to block out the terror physically, well, it pushes Ryan into a corner. He realizes the whole normalcy bias trick isn't going to save him. He can't just shut his eyes and pretend he's alone.
No, he can't.
So he pivots to seeking objective proof. He decides to introduce an impartial observer into the environment. On the fourth night, he leaves his phone on his desk, hitting record on the audio app before he goes to sleep.
This is a frantic attempt to regain narrative control over his own life.
Right, because an audio recorder doesn't have an ego.
Exactly. It doesn't experience hypnagogic hallucinations or sleep paralysis. By relying on digital capture, Ryan is hoping to find an anchor to objective reality.
He wants proof he's crazy.
He is secretly praying to wake up, play the tape, and hear absolutely nothing, which would confirm he is simply losing his mind.
But that isn't what happens. The recording captures the entire 3.07 a.m. interaction. The voice on the tape is clearer than it has ever been in the room.
Yeah.
It says, "You know it's me." And then a few seconds later, it adds, "Because you remember."
And Ryan doesn't say a word.
Right, Ryan, lying in bed during this, stays completely silent. He refuses to take the bait. The true horror of this sequence doesn't manifest until the sun comes up and Ryan actually plays the audio back.
This part is so disturbing.
When he listens to the file, he doesn't just hear the voice from the closet. He hears two voices layered perfectly together.
The implications of that dual-layered audio shift the entire nature of the threat. It forces us to discard the mimicry theory entirely.
Think about the mechanics of an echo for a second. An echo requires a delay.
Right.
Sound hits the surface, bounces back, and you hear it a fraction of a second later. What Ryan heard wasn't an echo, and it wasn't a mimic repeating after him. It was a perfect, simultaneous overlap.
It's terrifying.
It's like acoustic feedback. If you take a live microphone and point it directly at the speaker it's plugged into, you create a closed-loop feedback system that results in a screech.
Yeah.
But feedback loop Ryan caught on tape wasn't an electronic screech. It was human consciousness.
The analogy of a closed-loop feedback system is vital here. If the two voices are perfectly synced on the recording syllable for syllable, breath for breath, but Ryan was completely silent in the physical room.
What's ways?
It means the entity isn't listening to him through the door. It is experiencing his internal monologue. It has access to his cognitive processes.
Because you remember?
Exactly. That line indicates a shared psychological history. This is parasitic duality. The entity isn't copying him. It is actively mirroring his neural pathways in real time.
So the phone recording does the one thing Ryan was terrified it would do. It removes the safety net of insanity.
Yeah, you can't fake a digital file like that.
You cannot capture a psychological breakdown on a smartphone's microphone. Knowing that you are actively losing your mind is terrifying, but having objective digital proof that a reality-bending parasite is living in your closet and reading your thoughts.
It's so much worse.
It is so much worse.
And the digital proof forces a confrontation. Ryan can no longer live in the tension of the unknown.
He's reached his breaking point.
The psychological pressure of sharing a physical space with an entity that shares his consciousness is unsustainable. He has to collapse the waveform. He has to open the door and see what is looking back at him.
Which brings us to the fifth night, the climax of Ryan's documentation. He doesn't go to sleep. He sits in the dark, and he waits for the clock to hit 3.07 a.m.
The tension must have been unbearable.
When the minute turns, the voice speaks, but the tone is shifted. It is completely calm. It is expecting him. It just says, "Open it."
There is no pleading anymore. There is no mimicry of fear. It is a command from something that knows it has already won the psychological war.
Ryan stands up. He walks across the room to the closet, and here's the detail that truly disturbed me. As he walks, the voice stops entirely. The room goes dead silent.
It's waiting.
The entity isn't speaking because it knows he is finally complying. Ryan puts his hand on the knob, opens the door, and whispers into his own recording device. There was someone inside. And immediately following that sentence, the audio file cuts to a violent, deafening burst of static.
That burst of static is the auditory representation of reality breaking apart. It is the end of Ryan's documentation and the abrupt termination of his timeline.
And the end of Ryan, period.
Right.
The hosts of the Midnight Signals broadcast explicitly stated that Ryan simply vanished after uploading that file. He never responded to their follow-up emails. Law enforcement checks at the apartment supposedly turned up nothing. He was just gone.
Just completely erased.
But the disappearance isn't the ultimate horrifying payload of this deep dive. The producers of the show were finalizing the episode, running the audio through noise reduction software to clean it up for broadcast.
They shouldn't have done that.
They really shouldn't have, because buried deep in the waveform of that final burst of static, they isolated a faint, entirely different voice. It was no longer Ryan's voice. It was something else entirely, and it simply whispered, "Now it knows you hear it too."
That hidden audio artifact requires us to rethink the entire structure of the story.
It changes everything.
It introduces a concept similar to the observer effect in quantum mechanics, but applied to psychological horror. The observer effect dictates that the mere act of observing a phenomenon changes the outcome of that phenomenon.
So by opening the door, Ryan collapsed the possibility of the entity into a physical reality. He gave it form just by looking at it.
Yes, but the hidden message extends that mechanic to us.
To the listener.
Exactly. Up until that final whisper, this account was a passive recounting of a tragedy. It was an isolated incident about a guy who disappeared. But that message transforms the narrative into a mimetic virus, an active infection.
It's the ultimate trap. The entity wasn't just talking to Ryan in that final fraction of a second. It was talking through the recording equipment, anticipating that Ryan would share the file.
It was waiting for an audience.
Now it knows you hear it too. That implies that awareness is the sole catalyst for the infection.
By bearing witness to Ryan's reality, by analyzing the timeline, listening to the quotes, and visualizing that quiet bedroom, you have unwittingly mapped the coordinates of your own consciousness for the entity.
Wow.
The act of listening has become a vulnerability.
It takes us right back to the very beginning of this conversation, to the concept of the ultimate sanctuary. We've tracked an incredibly dark trajectory.
We really have.
It started in a perfectly mundane, safe apartment with a simple, unexplained noise that any rational person would write off as the house settling.
Right.
And we watched it mechanically escalate, bridging the gap between auditory illusion and physical reality until it became a parasitic entity that perfectly mirrored its victim to the point of complete replacement.
It's terrifying.
The core takeaway here completely subverts traditional fear. The most paralyzing horrors aren't external monsters trying to break the door down. The true existential threats are the ones that quietly take our own identity, our own voice, and our own safe spaces, and weaponize them against us.
It underscores the absolute necessity of the single rule established by Ryan's cryptic email. It isn't just a spooky tagline, it is a mechanism for psychological survival.
Don't open it.
If you ever find yourself lying in bed in the dead of night and you hear your own voice, your exact cadence, your exact tone originating from a dark closet or the hallway or anywhere outside of your own body, well, do not answer it.
Just ignore it.
Do not engage. Do not get up to firmly click the door shut in an attempt to enforce normalcy, because the simple act of acknowledging it might be the only permission it needs to cross over.
Think about the mechanics of what we just unpacked. This entity perfectly synced with Ryan's voice, his memories, and his consciousness. And then Ryan vanished completely, leaving only a digital file behind. If nobody has heard from Ryan since that night, and the apartment was empty, what exactly walked out of that closet?
That's the real question.
As you go about your routine tomorrow morning, as you wake up in your familiar room and speak your first words of the day out loud, I want you to really listen to the sound hid in your ears. How can you be absolutely entirely sure that the voice coming out of your mouth is still truly yours?